As the saying goes, a man's home is his castle.
There is no one factor more representative of the economic well-being of the American citizen than the home in which he lives.
It's not just the American dream. Across the rich world, people have been told they should be buying their own home.
Now's the time to buy a home.
Get on the housing ladder.
Starting from under $60,000.
Help to Buy is helping people get their foot on the housing ladder.
Owning a home is a part of that dream.
But why is there this pressure to get on the property ladder?
People don't really question the idea that home ownership is a good thing. It's something that they've always been told and assume it must be true.
有土斯有财这个概念源于《礼记·大学篇》，在中国已经流传2000多年了。但是在西方，这个居者有其屋的观念却是政府灌输给人民的。
To understand why, we need to go back 100 years. At the beginning of the 20th century, the majority of people in Britain, America, and other developed countries were renters. In Britain, for example, just 1 in 4 families owned their own home. But after the Second World War, many governments across the rich world made a monumental shift in policy. They decided to create nations of homeowners.
The idea was that if you're a homeowner, when you retire, you can sell your home and you can maybe live off the proceeds of that, or if you lose your job, then at least you've got some assets which you can sell.
Policies such as low interest loans, tax breaks on mortgages, and relief on capital gains tax were put in place to promote home ownership.
Creates a more stable, better society. In reality, there's only very weak evidence that home ownership kind of creates better citizens.
Supporters of home ownership often cite Singapore as an example of a highly stable country where ownership is high. There, 91% of the population own their own home, and it comes 9th in the world on the UN's Human Development Index. But if we look at Romania, there the home ownership rate is even higher. But it comes much lower in the world in terms of development. Which brings us back to Switzerland. Here, few own their own homes. Yet it's one of the most developed countries in the world.
文茜世界周报曾经造访瑞士日内瓦，一探当地最出名的合作社住屋之一。Cota 是日内瓦最著名的合作社，每个人先交出1万瑞士法郎的保证金，向与合作社合作的银行借钱，请建筑公司盖房子，之后每月缴交租金给合作社，由合作社负责营运。像是这间45平方公尺的房子，每月房租是1000瑞士法郎，合台币3万多，想住多久就可以住多久，而且租金不会随便调涨。若不是合作社所经营的房子，房租每月至少要2500瑞士法郎，相差甚大。
We are just renting, but we have our security. We know we can stay here. We're not going to be kicked out or anything. It's this influence, of these developers and these advertisements telling us you have to buy, kind of that influence people that think, oh yeah, I need. And as soon as they graduate from university, they're like, oh, I cannot marry if I don't have a house. I mean, why? Why such a stress? It's a question about just comfort and well-being, right?
At 38%, Switzerland has the lowest home ownership rate in the OECD, a group of mostly rich countries. In Britain, it's much higher. 2/3 of houses are owned by the people who live in them. According to The Economist's House Price Index, the Swiss housing market is considerably more stable than Britain's. A house in Switzerland is worth just 70% more today than it was in 1970. In Britain, prices have increased by 346% in the same period.
飙涨的房市最终危害到了全球经济体系。
From the 1950s, home ownership shot up, as did the amount of money banks gave in mortgages. By 2008, mortgage lending was worth 63% of rich countries' GDP. But in the long run, this new world of homeowners created more problems than it solved.
Financial catastrophe triggered. No one, it seems, can stop the bleeding.
The big, massive global financial crisis of 10 years ago was a housing crisis.
As homeowners defaulted on their mortgages at record rates, it was clear trouble was...
For a lot of people in America, they thought they were making a sensible financial decision by becoming homeowners, and that turned out to be completely wrong.
The crash was a disastrous consequence of the homeownership boom. But the damage caused by encouraging people to buy their own houses runs far deeper than financial crises.
The fundamental problem is to do with lack of supply. The whole rich world today builds like half the houses per person than it did in the 1960s.
错误的房市政策造成一整个世代买不起房、租不起屋，居住上的不公平，招致对资本主义失望的年轻人，对占有99%财富的那1%的富人心生怨恨。然而，错的不见得是居者有其屋这个构想。新加坡住房政策享誉国际，公共住房政策的实行甚至比国家独立时间更早。1959年取得自治地位的新加坡人口激增，失业潮汹涌，多数人只能够在漏屋区和贫民窟栖身。1960年2月，负责新建祖屋的建屋发展局成立，推出居者有其屋的计划，大批廉价祖屋在10年内解决房屋问题，称为政府祖屋的公共住房，现占全新加坡国住宅单位的80%。新加坡将住宅政策和社会政策、生育政策结合，诱因强烈。一个家庭原本只能购买祖屋2次，生育第3胎可以多1次机会，鼓励3代同堂，祖屋的中签率也会提高。
私人的可能会比较高这种政府祖屋还是有一个 gauge prevent 那个 price from going too high。
祖屋可以转卖，但是必须持有至少5年，而且政府要抽10%到25%的附加费，所以祖屋价格平稳，基本上不太炒得了房。瑞士人是这么说的：我们都被资本主义荼毒了，盲目以为政府不干预，自由市场是唯一的出路，但却没想过，瑞士每年高经济增长，却又能压抑房产泡沫，奇迹是怎么得来的？
Housing is a very special good. It's an important good. Everybody's got to have some housing. And so I'm not sure you can just leave it to the free market.
It seems that the measures is not so capitalist.
No.
I don't know how can I say.
No, you shouldn't think of Switzerland as being a hard capitalistic country. Not at all. No. It's social capitalism. I mean, it's capitalism with a heart.
Despite this, rich world governments continue to invest in promoting home ownership.
The US spends about $100 billion a year on the mortgage interest deduction in the form of foregone tax revenue. And the net effect of the policy on home ownership is essentially zero. The Help to Buy policy is a very ineffective policy. We found that Help to Buy in the Greater London Authority increased house prices by more than the implied subsidy, and it didn't lead to any new housing construction.
The case for the government spending all this money on promoting home ownership is quite weak, and they could be putting that money towards education or transport or healthcare.
Rather than creating a stable society, home ownership has been the West's biggest economic policy mistake. It's time to build an entirely new housing market, one that actually works.